Hello, everyone. We are live for another episode of the Guestness Engineering Hour show, the show where I bring you champion people who are doing extraordinary things and people who have a particular knowledge to share. And I do that because I want you to be empowered. I want you to get the right information, the right tools, the right strategies to be able to go to the next level of your greatness. And today we're going to Canada, and it's quite early in Canada. My guest is going to be Morẹ, and she will have the opportunity to introduce herself after the music. What I can tell you is that she's amazing. She's an award-winning entrepreneur, an innovator, a social activist, and a clinical pharmacist. So she is very dynamic and she's making things happen. And we're gonna spend some time today to talk about, her journey in social enterprise. And it's not always easy. They are big hurdles, but she always find a way to keep going. So let us know if you're watching live. Let us know where you're watching from. We want to hear from you. Be participate, be present, ask questions, and also give us your insight, because your insight matters, your voice matters. And what I'm going to ask you is to have your pen and your paper to take notes, because those conversations are really enriching, empowering, and I don't want you to leave this room without the notes and later on implement what's going to be shared. So come in, and we will meet Morẹ just after this short video, and we'll be back and start our conversation, which I think is going to be very, very interesting. So don't go anywhere. Get ready, sit tight, and really, expect something fantastic. Another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show, the show that is brought to you by the Virai Telekima Global Leadership Organization.
Feel is important is if you just look at the word compassion, when it's behavior, it's something that can be learned, and it is something that we can embody through habits and through our daily actions.
Like, what can I do now with this all experiences that that I have? And for me, it's knowing who I am, believing in myself, and trust, and have confidence that yes, this has happened.
To get this idea that if we interject this wisdom intentionally, I call them needle movers. It's the needle mover that's missing.
I was getting my first computer when I went into undergrad, right? And so I think that stick with what you're passionate about. And if you're passionate about learning technology, you're in a great space, because technology touches every industry.
So welcome, Morẹ, to the Greatness Engineering Hour show. Such a pleasure to, to host you. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time, but before I get too excited, please, introduce yourself to the audience. Let us know who you are and anything that is important for us to know about you.
For sure. My name is Morẹ, nikẹ, Ẹniọlá Ọláòṣebìkan, and I am a pharmacist. I own my own retail pharmacy franchise, and I recently launched a startup to build medication manufacturing facilities and processes and equipment that would enable Africans to make our own drugs at scale. And I also started a not for profit 16 years ago now.
Wow.
To initially, the intention was to eradicate HIV globally. What it actually became was it's an organization that uses arts-based research and culturally based practices to understand health injustice between Black people and those who are not Black in Canada. Yes, I guess that's a little bit about myself.
So yeah, so that's just, I think I would say that's the slim version, but people can always connect after we're finished. So today we're going to talk about the life lesson in the trenches of social innovation, and apparently you've been your journey as a social entrepreneur, like you said, I started 16 years ago, and the question that I have is how did you actually get involved in social entrepreneurship, and also what are the key challenges that you had to overcome to get to where you are right now?
Actually, if I were to think about the first entrepreneurial thing I did, it would be I might have been 7 years old. So so I feel like all my life I've been selling something. so so I remember that what had happened was I somehow got it into my head that I wanted to mobilize a drama club, and I
Oh.
lived in this tower, 12 floors. It felt like a really tall building, but it's just 12 floors. And so I went all the children. I lived on the second floor, but I went like from the ground floor all the way to the top, and I mobilized all the children. They came to my flat, and we decided that we're going to do a drama club, and we're going to charge all these parents, and we were going to go to their parties, and we were going to like put on performances at other kids' parties, because there were three towers. It's Eric Moore Tower. So there were three towers, ABC, and so we're gonna like, scale across the towers, and we were gonna have these theater performances and charge all these parents every time there was a party. And I think it's a really funny story because it's so symbolic of my personality and who I just consistently have been all my life. That if there's an opportunity, if I have an idea, that first of all, I have far too many ideas. And then if I have an idea, I'm going to just get going with it. And very often it's going to involve bringing a whole bunch of people together. It's going to involve fun, and then money is going to exchange hands. So it's a very, like, I think, symbolic story of myself. So that has been, your question was what sort of sparked that? When did that start for me? I would say that who I am is very much this person that enjoys bringing people together, enjoys the sort of clarity that comes with the exchange of value for money, and also enjoys doing good, like actually having something that is inspirational, that everyone can aspire to as a goal. And so for me, I think it's really integral to who I am. That persistency in personality. Now, in the context of my current work, I've also in my childhood had this deep interest or curiosity around HIV.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's because of who my parents were. So my dad's a physician and he was an activist,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom worked for the Food and Drug Agency in Nigeria. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
combination of that meant that at home I would hear conversations about HIV.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in my early childhood when it was coming through Nigeria, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people were dying and leaving
Mm-hmm.
behind orphans. And it stuck. It stuck as
Mm-hmm.
something that was not right. And I wanted to do something about it. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, I had some kind of epiphany that I was going to find a cure for HIV, which is so grandiose and
Mm-hmm.
so weird to think of as a child. And now that I'm a pharmacist, there's maybe one viral infection that has a cure,
Mm-hmm.
hepatitis. That is not a common thing for viral infections to have a cure, right? So, but that became the genesis of a lot of the threads that I have held onto with social entrepreneurship. This determination around the injustice that Black people experience with health
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
well being, and just not having access and outcomes in the way people who are not Black have access and outcomes to health and well being.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's a big, that's a big mission, because we can see the gaps, and like you said, really the injustice is really, there's a big gap between, the non-black and the people who are black, and in every country that's the case. So obviously I expect you to go through roadblocks, when you build all this capacity and this capability. So what are the crazy stories that you had to, basically uh leave, and you got, over it in a way, because obviously if you're here, I mean that you basically you overcame all those obstacles that were put, in front of you.
I am for sure still learning every day.
Mhm.
And I think that something that has actually been really enabling for me is the disposition I have to learning.
Mhm.
And I think understanding that learning is not just what happens in school. In fact,
Mhm.
very many of us go to school and actually don't learn much.
Mhm.
We get degrees, and we get degrees and the first class and the
Thank
distinction
you.
and everything. And you're not learning is in my mind and knowledge that's really mobilized into value and work, um, is not necessarily in those accolades and degrees. And so
Mhm.
I guess just to acknowledge that I think a lot of what has actually enabled me and enabled my work has actually come from just this deep hunger, thirst,
Mhm.
desire, constitution I have for always learning
Mhm.
in different ways, in different contexts. Um, and then to your question, which was the juicy stories and the issues and the challenges, in that same
Mhm.
vein, I would say that probably the biggest challenge I've experienced would be me. I think people forget that they're an instrument, that they themselves are an instrument in the work.
Mhm.
So people think,
Mhm. Mhm.
oh, I'm going to get money and that's going to fix things, or which was actually the first theory of change for Ribbon Rouge. This
Mhm.
really terrible idea that we would sell arts and we would make so
Mhm.
much money, and all the money we would make from arts would just go back to Africa and fix the problem. um, there's so many ways that this is not a good strategy
Mhm.
that I don't even know where to begin. But I think
Mhm.
one of the biggest barriers that a person can experience in the journey to innovation is actually who they are, they themselves,
Mhm.
the way they get in their own way, the way I get in my own way, the way my mindset gets in my own way, the way my ego gets in the way. Um,
Mhm.
so I would say that there's a lot of inner work that we tend to
Mm-hmm.
ignore in the course of changing anything. So you look at the outer world and you say, why is this happening? They must be bad. There's something wrong with that, or there's something wrong with them, and all the problems in this outer world and this outer system. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to fight and I'm going to save it and I'm going to fix it because I'm good. And then you set
Mm-hmm.
up us versus they scenario, which is
Mm-hmm.
such an illusion. And until you get to a place as an innovator where you are holding part of the problem, you
Mm-hmm.
actually cannot solve because you cannot engage with the problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think if I'm going to start from first principles, if I go first principles thinking, that a lot of the first maybe 10 years of my social innovation journey with the particular focus on HIV and Black health and injustices and all of that, that a lot of it was actually getting acquainted with who I am
Mm-hmm.
and getting acquainted with how I am part of the problem,
Mm-hmm.
getting acquainted with how I am and how I am actually an instrument for change, and in which ways do I do it effectively, and
Mm-hmm.
in which ways do I sabotage myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that knowledge is very powerful when it comes from a deep-seated consciousness and authenticity, because this is the place that I feel I'm able to do my best work from, when that inner knowledge and deep knowing of myself is true and complete.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, there are all sorts of other issues that are external that come after that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think a foundational piece that's really crucial is acknowledging that who you are and your inner world gets to co-create how you experience everything around you, and then how you mobilize for change as a social entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. That's just so powerful, and I like it because, like you said, when there are problems, it's always, and especially in the context of Africa, it's always, oh, okay, it's the government, it's this, it's that, and we don't always come back and reflect on, what is our role, and how can we actually use any gift that we have, or any a resource that we have, to be part of the solution instead of being part of the division. And that's a very important message to have, is you have to look inside of you and focus on what you can control and what you can influence. And if you can influence and you can do something, do it. But don't spend all your energy basically pointing the fingers to people outside or to circumstances outside if you don't do anything about it. And that's a very powerful statement. And we have Liliane here. She's watching from Switzerland, and she's saying that yes, we are instrument of change on the basis that we question ourselves, and we now bring the good, the bad, and not so good, with the intention of creating best of change for better next generation. And that's true, and I really love it, because it's not just about us at the end. We do the introspection, we go inside, we understand who we are, we understand how we can play the game, but we have to think about the one that are coming. And that's sometimes the missing link in all of this. So wow, I really like this the way this conversation is going. We're gonna have a small break, and we'll be back to delve a little bit more into all of this. So don't go anywhere. We're just gonna have a small break, and we will be back with you to continue, and with Mornica to continue this conversation, which is really enlightening. So we are back. We are back with Morẹ, nikẹ, and today we are talking about social innovation, and one area that really stand up, especially one big issue that stand up as far as Africa is concerned or developing countries concerned is those counterfeit drugs. And I really want to ask you, how serious is this issue, and how do you, because obviously you mentioned that you're developing, an entity that is going to manufacture drugs. So how do you combat all of this? Because it's really rampant, you know, especially in a lot of country in Africa.
Yes, it is. So, um, I guess backstory. So I have this childhood imagination that I'll find the cure for HIV. And
Mm-hmm,
then at some point, I contracted tuberculosis.
mm-hmm,
And so I ended up getting treatment for 9 months in Nigeria. And I ended up seeing, because in Nigeria, unlike Canada or the US, UK, so-called developed countries, um, you you hardly see co-infection with tuberculosis and HIV,
mm-hmm,
because most people living with HIV in developed countries are so well controlled that
mm-hmm,
they don't get the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome and co-infections that are associated with that.
mm-hmm,
But that was not the case. My experience was that those 9 months, I got to see on a daily basis what it actually looked like. This was about 17, 18 years ago. What it actually looked like to live with HIV in Nigeria
mm-hmm,
and to get treatment. Now, I did not have HIV, but I was able to see people attending the facility and how they accessed care and the lack
mm-hmm,
of access to care. And that left a very significant imprint in me. So that when I came to Canada, there was just this desire to find a
mm-hmm,
way to make a difference. And as I said, my first idea was, oh, I'm going to make so much money selling
mm-hmm.
art. Selling art. I mean, artists, there's some artists that make a lot of money and are balling out of control, but the
Mm-hmm,
general um situation with artists, very sadly and unfortunately, because I feel that artists are the soul and sort of conscience of
mm-hmm,
world.
mm-hmm,
But the general state of arts isn't that you could use art to make billions of dollars to then fix
mm-hmm,
the problem. But this is where it started. It started with this fashion art music show.
mm-hmm,
But what why I tell this story is because one of the my biggest life lessons, I think, from social innovation is to just start. To
mm-hmm,
just start. You have an inspiration inside you that makes no sense to anyone outside you.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And it is you, it is who you are. And this is why my first point to the biggest challenge very often to the work is you. It's me.
mm-hmm,
It's what we're doing inside ourselves, the inner turmoil that we put ourselves through. And so I think that first show made about $2,900 in
mm-hmm,
profit. But as a student, as an international student, I remember sitting there counting the cents one by one and just mind blown that anybody paid for that thing, because it had to have been the most amateur fashion show known to man. Like,
mm-hmm,
it could not get more amateur if I tried. That show was amateur, but it was so fun. And so many people came together to make that thing happen. And I think that the thing that kills a lot of people's dreams, and in fact steals people's lives is you think that the thing you're wanting to do, or you're being called to do, or you're being inspired to do, or something that's in you, gifted, talented, blessed in your life, is somehow less than because it's not validated by what you're seeing outside. You don't fit
Mm-hmm.
in. You don't fit into the machine of education and
Mm-hmm.
industrialization and everything you're seeing outside you. So then you never start. And that is, in my mind, one of the saddest things that happens to us, is how we ourselves get in our own way.
Mm-hmm.
So this backstory is, we start with this very amateur fashion show, but that show ran every year and donated money to African organizations every year to contribute a solution to HIV. And that became a big place for learning. And
Mm-hmm.
so another thing is, people think that they go to school and then they're going to learn. That's one way to learn. But there
Mm-hmm.
are other ways to learn. Once you put a whole bunch of people in a room and now you're in relationships with each other, you know what happens in every relationship? Learning.
Mm-hmm.
There's social learning. There's a learning you get from your intuition, from inside you, inspiration, spiritual learning. There is physical learning that gets from movement as you move your
Mm-hmm.
body, as you go through space. There's learning there. There's learning that comes from in metaphors, in looking at nature and the world around you and seeing how nature and the world around you functions,
Mm-hmm.
and the metaphor in there. There's learning, there's non rational ways of knowing. And what starts
Mm-hmm.
to happen with this fashion show is, as the years go by, I'm learning about the injustices of HIV in a way that for me was really profound. And
Mm-hmm.
I started to see that this isn't only HIV. There are all these injustices under that. There's poverty, there's lack of access to education, there's gender inequity. There is this huge infrastructure gap across Africa that, like, literally keeps us from never experiencing even the first industrial revolution. Now we're talking
Mm-hmm.
industry 4.0. But where was our first industrial revolution across Africa? That just breaks my heart even thinking it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this begins this journey of learning. Now we I learned, okay, so I start, oh, it's a money problem. Then I realized, nah, this isn't a money problem. Then it becomes, oh, this is stigma. People are
Mm-hmm.
shamed and people are shaming others. And then I realized, it's more. Oh, this is law. There's laws and policies and economic constraints and all sorts of ways that our public health and all of that is actually designed to create
Mm-hmm.
this problem. And then I start to see the structure underneath the injustice of how Black people live, how our, like, the I think health is a fundamental human right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you have a situation where so many people are not experiencing joy, peace, abundance, well being, that our human rights are being violated en masse,
Mm-hmm.
that is unfair. So then that it deepens into this layer of the structural injustice of what I'm observing. And then I become a pharmacist. So I get curious about drugs. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started to travel African countries and interview people. And I find out that, over 90% of our medications are imported. In certain parts, 70% of what's being imported is fake. People die of not getting drugs. And then people that get drugs die of the drugs that they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
In certain years in Nigeria, 60,000 babies were born with HIV. And a lot of those mothers were taking baking soda, thinking they were taking drugs.
Wow.
There's so many entangled issues with how mother to child transmission happens. But one of the ways mother to child transmission of HIV happens is fake people taking fake drugs. This is 100% preventable thing,
Mm-hmm.
where if you take the appropriate medications, babies don't need to have been born with HIV
Mm-hmm.
or to acquire HIV from their mothers. It's in my mind, so unfair how this particular medication insecurity then plays out across the continent. And so this becomes, or this became, I should say, a passion for me. How do I use medication access as the entry point to justice?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so and it's profound, like you said, it's very profound because those people are actually vulnerable because they don't have the information, so they really depend on whatever is available. And I know that a lot of the fake drugs are actually cheaper than the medication, and it makes sense because if everything is imported, then obviously it's more expensive, so they become victim of all those cheap drugs, and they don't realize that actually in the long run they they damage they actually create more damage than paying for the for the one that is expensive. And I think that's where maybe there is a gap as well. How do you educate those people, and how do you change their mindset, because they look at health from a cost point of view instead of looking at the impact of one medication to another, and really focus on that, even if they have to choose between one medication and another. So how do you, as a newcomer into this market, gonna make sure that people get educated, gonna make sure that you bring the drugs at a price, or at and satisfy the market? What are the key things that you think are going to be important for you?
I feel like there are two questions in what you
Yes.
asked.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this is something from social innovation as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at a problem that is a complex problem, one of the there are several features of complex problems. But one of the key features of complex problems is that you can't put a finger on the problem. You also can't put a finger on the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the problem has many levels, and the problem is entangled with other issues and other people. And this is why, to address a complex problem, it can't be just you. There has to be systems thinking. Now
Mm-hmm.
you have to bring in, and when I say systems now, I'm not, because I realize I'm on an engineering show. I'm not talking
Mm-hmm.
systems engineering now. I'm saying systems thinking in looking at the fact that there are political systems interacting with educational systems, interacting with culture, interacting with every other kind of dynamic you can come up with, and also understanding then that there you have to have multiple perspectives to look at your problem. And then in the form that my leadership takes, it's also looking at the problem and seeing what part of this problem is technical
Mm-hmm.
and what part of this problem is adaptive.
Mm-hmm.
Technical problem can be complicated. It is, I need to put machinery in a factory and make some drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Adaptive problem is the country you're going to has billionaires, literally, people who have made billions of dollars getting fake drugs in and out of this country. They have set up political, high level political connections to ensure their sustainability in this corruption complex that has formed with foreign aid involved. The players you're navigating and negotiating literally is your life on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Woman that actually stood up and fought counterfeit medications in Nigeria got shot. The only
Whoa.
reason she survived was she had this massive head tie, and the bullet went through the head tie.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bullet meant for her brain. So I say this because your question talks about education. Education
Mm-hmm.
is one part of it, but then there is I think there's a part of our existence that we deny a lot. It's spiritual level of our existence. So I think we are spiritual, emotional, physical beings with a psychological, mental experience of an inner world. And what we do is we recognize the mental part. We don't really recognize the inner world. We don't recognize emotion. We don't recognize necessarily um like the physical we acknowledge, but we don't recognize spiritual. I think that beyond the education, there is a deep need for people to want to do right and to be right and to be compassionate and loving, just and fair. And that's not something you can educate into a person, right? And so now you have this really adaptive, complex problem. So I guess to speak to the fact that the problem is complex, and complex problems have many root causes, which requires multiple perspectives, requires collaboration and bringing so many people in. So that's that part of the question. But then the second part of the question is, and what am I doing? You said, what am I doing specifically about education? But what I'm going to say is what I'm doing. So because there's so many aspects to the problem, I have to pick the thing that I can start with. So what I've picked is to build these facilities and to build agile just-in-time manufacturing processes, to over time develop equipment that works in these facilities, and these facilities are transportable, they're scalable, and they will be able to make medications just in time. So we'll have a data platform that actually allows us to gather data and make drugs just in time. Now, there's still adaptive parts to that problem because I still have to do the government relations for public-private partnership, which means I still have to get into the political and really understand relationships, understand who are my allies, who are my confidants, who are my enemies, straight up, that are going to try to shoot me. Like, it's like there's still that part of the complexity. But I'm not specifically initially wanting or trying to educate people who are distributing counterfeit medications. That's not entirely, it is important. It's a problem. But it's not part of the solution that I am bringing, because the problem is so huge that there are going to be so many of us that have to like mobilize over time to solve different parts of the problem.
I was actually more talking about the education on, people who are using those counterfeit, so that they are aware of, the difference. When they make this decision of buying the counterfeit, they understand what are the consequences for them, ahead of being before it's too late. So I think that was the where from I was coming from, that side of the problem. So I mean, you mentioned, and it's a big one, and we know in Africa, you have to create your network. You can have everything, the money, the ideas, everything, but the network on the ground is really important. So how are you managing that, and what is the strategy, in a way, and process that you use to get together, the right people, and then put the right people in the right, at the right place to be able to build, this manufacturing infrastructure that you're talking about?
So much of my life, I think, prepared me for this particular startup. So what I think happened is, I don't know if people are familiar with this Japanese concept called ikigai. So there's this Japanese concept described as ikigai, Ikigai. And within this concept, You achieve flow with your life, oneness
Mm-hmm.
with life, and all that is around you through regular, deliberate practice.
Mm-hmm.
So you wake up every day, you put in your effort into the work, and that work happens to be something you are passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
The world needs it. You are great at it. Like you are inexplicably good at it. And the world will pay you for it.
Mm-hmm.
So your question is how these relationships and the political tension in there, how did I mobilize that way or bring the people and the resource, the human,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing human
Women.
resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ribbon Rouge Foundation evolved in a way that what I end up experiencing is half of Ikigai, where I am doing something the world needs and I so love it. I'm so passionate about it, but I can't be paid doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I'm not sure that I can necessarily say that it was all my competence that was going into Ribbon Rouge. A lot of it was going into it, but I don't know that I can say I was gifted at it.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other half is my pharmacy brain. So there's the art side with Ribbon Rouge, and then the other side is my science side, my
Mm-hmm.
pharmaceutical science side, expressed as a pharmacist in owning a retail pharmacy operation. So what I was getting there is competence, like
Mm-hmm.
my like a lot of my competence showed up there, and I was being paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this startup, what it has happened is all the life lessons, brutal life lessons in these
Brutal.
two, in these two halves of my career have now come to bear in this one place. One thing I can say I sense is just a natural gift that I have is my ability to form relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I don't put in effort in there. It just happens. And I guess maybe a third lesson from the trenches is figure out what you're great at. Not just what you're good at, what you are just spectacularly great at. And this is not necessarily something that's going to be endorsed by society. It's
Mm-hmm.
not even necessarily something that people think of as a skill set. It's just, and the way you figure it out, I think, for me, anyways, is you list what you're doing every day. Like take an Excel sheet and actually write it out. What you're doing every day, how much hours you're spending, how much time you're spending on it. And then write in a column, does it give you energy? Does it give you joy? When you do this thing, do you expand? Does it fill you up? Are you energized? Or does it suck the life out of you, literally? Does it
Mm-hmm.
suck the energy out of you? This is how you know what you love and what you're great at. And the second way is what people tell you. The feedback you keep getting will tell you what you're great at. And that thing you're great at, there's a reason you're great at it. There's a reason you're inspired to start something that doesn't necessarily make sense to everyone. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
reason you are great at certain things. And
Mm-hmm.
it's there for all of us. Trouble is we get socialized and things get educated out of us. And
Mm-hmm.
as we go, you have to come to a point, I think, where you start to unlearn the things that are not serving you, where your gifts and your talents, your proclivities get taken away from you because you think you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. If what you're great at is talking, talk. If what you're
Mm-hmm.
great at is relationships, relationship away. And so, what I will say as a foundational thing to your question is I just happen to be the kind of person that is just sticky. I'm a super connector. I'm very relational. The way I think is relational. So when I go to make a decision, very rarely have I just spontaneously made that decision. Most often, what probably happens is there's 4 or 5 advisors that I have reached out to. Now, I don't have to do what they all say. It's not a consensus process, but it's an advice process. Like I would go, I would ask Miriel, what do you think about this? And Tayo, like I'll just go around like that, and then I'll sit with it for a while, and then I'll decide what I'm going to do. It's not necessarily what everybody else said. It's not necessarily a synthesis of what they said. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but it's certainly a relational process. So how I got here is there's all these connections from all these careers and many, many, many failures, many things that didn't go the way I wanted them to go, many things I learned from that meant that when it was time, when I knew it was time to actually make the leap into this startup, there were so many relationships that enabled it. For example, on my board at the Ribbon Rouge Foundation was the honorary consul for one of the African countries to Canada. There were all these ambassadors that I then had access and connections to that then took me into each African country that I went to. There were all these people that had volunteered in the foundation that knew aunties and uncles and literally just called people up. This woman is coming. She's a force to be reckoned with. You have to answer her. And there was just people that just knew my energy that called in favors from everywhere to enable that path for me. And so I think the lesson I want to really highlight here is do the thing that you're passionate about and do the thing that you're just inexplicably gifted at, because that thing opens the door for you. Um, and it's not necessarily what people consider skills. It's not necessarily like, oh, empathy and grit and all the other productivity and all these things that sometimes the thing that you're really great at actually is really unique to you.
Wow, wow, wow. And I hope you are listening, you are taking notes. Either, even if you're not watching now, when you're going to watch the replay, when it's going to be played again, I hope you're taking notes, because this is really a profound, conversation that we are having with Morẹ. And as you see, innovation is not just about being technical. There's a lot of spiritual, there's a lot of angle to it, and you can see it from the you can hear it from the conversation that we are having today. So we're going to have our last break, and we'll be back for to conclude on the show, and really understand what's next for Morẹ. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Chomono zange wami omwe wanopunga nigamba ninyoinyo bikamba noremiwo anchomono zange wami omwe wanopunga la 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 la.
So we are back with Morẹ. It has been a very, very, insightful and inspiring conversation. And one question that I have for you, Morẹ, because you've been doing so much work and really, a lot for society, humanity, and you still have all those big dreams, I suppose. because it never ends, as for innovators. So what is the legacy that you want to leave, so far?
When I die, when people talk about me, I want so much that I want them to describe how they felt being around me. God, I'm gonna start crying. I want
That's not the that's not the objective, but
I
you are
know,
allowed to cry.
I know. I want it to be that people felt loved and deeply cared for. Um, Now I know I should have had that cup of coffee because then I could just pretend like I'm drinking my coffee. I want people to feel,
It's a hard one, but I like, asking this question to my guests
yeah,
because it makes them go deep inside of them and really, take what's profound and then bring it out.
yeah. I want people to remember that they felt dignified. And I think that's the thing that really, really gets to me about the Black experience, the lack of dignity.
So bringing back dignity and really making sure that Black people get, to experience this at all
Yeah,
level, and
yeah,
that's a big one, and I think we all working toward it. Like you
yeah,
said, there's still a lot of injustice, not only from people outside Africa, but also African themselves fighting against each other. And something needs to be done to align everybody and to bring more dignity for for Black people and for African wherever they are and wherever and whatever they do, because that's really what it is. So it has been like I said, thank you so much for making the time for this conversation. It went really well, and we've learned a lot, not only on your own experience, but also I think what I take from it is that anything that you want to do, you can do it. You just have to start, and we all have a gift inside of us. We just have to call this gift and start, and really that's the basic of all of things, and not focus too much on what's the outside world is saying, and what the outside world what's happening in the outside world. It's more about focusing on what we can have control on, and how we can really make an impact and keep going, because that's really the key, is that the challenges are many, but we'll just have to keep going. So how do people, connect with you if they want to know a bit more about your work and even continue this conversation? Because obviously 1 hour is not enough to fit everything. So how do they connect with you?
I'll just add one more thing to your recap learning that
Mm-hmm.
life is the entire thing, the innovation work, your life, my life, all of it. It's We're in a huge classroom. That's what
Mm-hmm.
this world is, this huge classroom that we learn from in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
How to connect with me? I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, maybe too active on LinkedIn. So
Mm-hmm.
check, like, you could take my name, connect with me on LinkedIn. And
Mm-hmm.
also, Kemet is on LinkedIn, the name of my startup that's building medication manufacturing across Africa is also on LinkedIn, Kemet Group, and our website, kemet.care. Thank you for listening. And it's been, Mary, you're a great interviewer, and this has been a terrific experience for me as well.
Thank you so much. And we have Liliane is still around. So I'm just going to list all the comments. It's not good enough to want to change what is mirrored to us. The fundamental of failures is a key. And she's also talking about we all have a gift in all of us. and also just emphasizing what I remind people to. So thank you very much again. Thank you for your time. It was early morning, but wow, what an inspiration. What a way to start the day with this inspiration, this knowledge, and all this insight that you pour to us. So I hope the audience got really full with all the input and all the whatever you've dropped today. And that's really important. And that on the Greatness Engineering Hour show, I always bring you people who are going to inspire you and people who are going to challenge you in a way to your core. And I hope that's how you felt today. I hope you felt challenged, and you're going to go after we finish, you're going to go and start to implement some of the tip and strategy that Morẹ shared today. So we're gonna be back with another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour next week, before going off for the festive season, and be back fresh in January, rejuvenated with new guests, new inspiring guests. So but for today, that's the end. And again, thank you to Morẹ for accepting to grace the platform of the Greatness Engineering Hour show. And all the best. Enjoy your day. And if we don't have the opportunity to talk, enjoy the festive season. Make sure you replenish yourself and you get ready for the big journey with your startups. And good luck with the award. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks, Liliane, for always be there. And have a great day.
Have a lovely day. Bye.